Kia ora, ko Megan Anakin toko ingoa. I'm a member of AIPPEN Steering Committee and your host for today's session. Before we begin, I'd like to say that AIPPEN and ANZAPPE acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners, custodians, and knowledge holders of the lands and waters across Australia and on which our members live, work, and to their elders, past and present and future. AIPPEN and ANZAPPE also acknowledge Maori as tangata whenua and Te Triti o Te Waitangi partners in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I invite you to introduce yourself and make any acknowledgements you feel are appropriate using the chat function of Zoom, please. Please ensure that your first and last name are visible on your tile. If you're an AIPPEN member, of part of the committee, or if you're an ANZAPPE fellow, would you mind putting a letter F after your name if you're willing to help facilitate a breakout room with us today? Because we really want everyone to have very engaging conversations. I would also like to advise you that this event is being recorded. Please turn off your video if you wish. However, I encourage you to keep it on in the breakout rooms. The conversations in the breakout rooms will not be recorded. Just to remind you about the chat function, we really want to make sure that your name is correct. And if both names are possible, if two people are on one machine, please make sure everybody's name is visible, just because we really want to know who's there. I would also like to encourage you to use your chat function to post comments and questions throughout the session today, because the goal of this series of networking events is to encourage conversations between people interested in interprofessional education. And we really want to exchange ideas and share our practice. So on to today's session, because I think more people have arrived. That's my quick tap dancing here. Today's session is called Exchanging Ideas about How to Facilitate Interaction and Create Safe Learning Spaces for Interprofessional Education. This networking session will discuss strategies to facilitate interaction between students in face-to-face and Zoom classes. And you're going to have a chance to think about some new ideas or how your practice can be enhanced. Before I hand over to our guest facilitators, I'd like to introduce first Eileen McKinlay. She's now an associate professor and director of the IPE Centre at the University of Otago. Sorry, I almost made you an emeritus. That's Sue. Congratulations. She's been facilitating in-person IPE for many years, and since 2020, Eileen has worked at adapting interprofessional education for Zoom delivery. So you're going to hear a few really interesting ideas. We also have Linda Gulliver, who's a senior lecturer and the IPE academic lead for the Division of Health Sciences at the University of Otago in Dunedin. She also convenes an integrated case-based program for second and third year medical students at the Otago Medical School. Linda has facilitated small group learning for medical students since 2005, so she's going to be drawing on a wealth of knowledge for us today too. So over to you, Eileen and Linda, please, to start our conversation with they're going to give us an overview of their approach before we're invited to build on that. Over to you, Eileen and Linda, please.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Eileen McKinlay tēnei. Big thank you to Megan and AIPPEN for their warm welcome and for inviting Linda and I to present. So today we want to explore how to create safe interprofessional learning spaces, firstly for teachers to learn about IPE facilitation, and secondly for students to learn with, from and about each other. We know that successful IPE relies on effective small group interaction between students, and this is dependent not only on the learning activity itself, but on the level of participant engagement that can be achieved by the facilitator. So I'm going to hand over to Linda at this point.
Great. Thank you, Eileen. I hope everybody can hear me okay. First of all, what we'd like to do is have a look at how we created what we considered to be a safe learning space for IPE facilitators as teachers, so that they could experience how students might feel. In turn, they could create such a space for their own students. So we chose to use an escape room model to show teachers what it feels like to be in a safe, created learning space. So the teachers became the students. And by choosing an escape room model, we hope that it would encourage them to work collaboratively alongside each other to solve a common problem, or conundrum as we termed it. So I'm going to be showing you 3 short video clips from the session that we created. But first, before I show you the first clip, which was taken right at the beginning of the session, I'd like to just to reflect for a minute what we mean by a safe learning environment, because the term's widely used, but what does it really mean, and what are the hallmarks of a safe learning environment? How do we actually achieve these also in an online learning situation? So to our mind, if you create a safe learning environment, your participants will be engaged, they'll be motivated, they will be creative, but they'll be willing to share, they'll be enjoying themselves, they'll be receptive to learning, and they'll be able to take away something that will resonate with them. So I'm about to show you our first clip with just a short clip. This is where we were sort of setting up the session, just talking about the importance of interprofessional learning and learning environments. What I would like to do is have you participate in this, and I would like you to look at this first clip, and I'd like you to look at the body language and the facial expressions of the IP facilitators at this early stage. So just bear with me while I screen share. I know that in some health professions, it's been the attitude that if you get somebody from a health profession, a particular discipline, and they come and give a talk to a class of a different health profession, that's engaging in interprofessional education. But actually, it's really nothing of the sort. If you're going to engage in interprofessional education, you have to have different health disciplines actually working alongside one another, so that they actually learn about one another and they learn from each other. And you will have heard that before, but it actually works very well if you get the right environment for that to happen. And so that's what we're trying very hard to establish now in interprofessional education. So, okay, sorry, I'm going to just, you had an emoji? Yes. Right. Okay, so I'll leave that there for the moment. But what I want to say to you now is just get a bit of feedback from you actually as to what you thought. You can put this in the chat. What you thought that they were showing in the way of facial expressions and body language at this point in time. And I won't be able to look at everybody's chat, so I'm going to push ahead and I'm going to say I think probably that most of you would agree that at the moment they're pretty subdued, pretty ho-hum, and they need some sort of a challenge. So the next clip that you're going to see, in this clip, they receive instructions as to how they're going to navigate the escape room model to solve the conundrum. The scenario for the conundrum is centered around an elderly woman, Alice. Now, hopefully, I can also show you a little bit more here, and we'll see if we can find Alice. Can we see here? Over here, we've got Alice and her granddaughter, Sarah.
Yes, thanks.
Can you see this all right?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, so Alice has to be rescued from a rapidly flooding house during an extensive flooding event on the west coast of the South Island in New Zealand. The facilitator team need to get access to Alice's house, and the front door can't be opened. There's something wedged up against it. The back door on an upper level of land can, but it's locked, and the windows are closed. The team need to use a series of images and clues when making decisions as to how they rescue Alice and her pet, named Nemo, who is a cat actually and not a fish, as it turns out. Alice has suffered some sort of medical event, which also has to be explored by the team. Now, in setting up something like this online, we really did have to pay quite close attention to giving the appropriate amount of instruction. So in the next clip, we're going to be watching this instruction. I'm just going to see if we can get to that before. Sorry. I want a blank screen. Okay, we might get the tail end of this one. Here we go. Trying very hard to establish now an interprofessional education. So, you had an emoji which corresponded to your discipline. Marianne now has looked at all the disciplines, mixed you all up, and as far as possible got a good mix of disciplines for you to go into your breakout rooms. There are 5 breakout rooms, so you'll be in 5 groups of 5 or thereabouts. You may have a visitor coming into that group on the odd occasion. It might be myself, or you might have a permanent visitor in terms of a participant, and that might be Sarah or Lindley, because I think they wanted to play the game. So, in your first, you've got a series of folders. They're all password protected, and Marianne's about to give you the passwords. Please open the folders in sequence as you finish problem solving and going through. Don't race ahead, you'll ruin your own fun. So, okay, so when you get to your first folder, I think it's called the conundrum folder, that's the scenario. Open that first when we tell you, because this is going to be time limited. It's like an escape room. You've got 30 minutes to solve the conundrum, okay? And once you open the scenario, you'll be directed, after the scenario opens up and you know what you're dealing with, to the first folder. Each of the folders will have a series of clues, some of them cryptic, so you're going to have to use common sense, a little bit of thinking outside the box, some of them quite specific to your discipline, so you have to think from your discipline. So, so look out for that, because you not only use your common sense and your life skills, you'll be using your skills as a practitioner as well in your own field. As you open the folders, they'll appear in your downloads. So that's where you go looking for them if you open them off the calendar, and then open them up from the download. When you reach checkpoint sign, you have to make a decision as a team, and everybody must contribute. This is much the same as what you're going to be doing with your students. So you have to come to a decision as a team as to what you're going to do, what you've chosen to do, and then you make that decision, you record it somewhere. Always write it down somewhere, please, because you'll come back to it once you get to folder 5. When you get to folder 5, don't open it until you've solved the conundrum. Open folder 5, you'll then see that every decision you have made has incurred a score. When you add those up, the scores come to out of 100. Save that score somewhere, and your team leader, because each of you are going to choose a team leader, and you're going to give your team a name, so it can be as wacky as you like. And your team leader then decides, in collaboration with the rest of the team, of course, who's going to present the approach that their team took back to the whole room when we come back into the main Zoom room. So you may be in for a few surprises and hopefully in for a few laughs. Okay, so blank screen there for just a while, just while I fill you in. So they went away in their breakout rooms and they tackled the escape room. The third video clip I'm going to show you shows the teams reporting back on the approach that they took to solving the conundrum, sharing their score out of 100 and one thing that they would take away from the activity. Only 2 teams report back here, but there were 5 in total. Okay, so can we have team 1 first? I think that was one, Murray, you're in that team, I think. And are you muted?
Yes, I am. Yeah. Sorry, I've been nominated to report back. We are the Scoundrels, also known as Lee and the Hales. So we scored 79 out of the possible available score, because we made a couple of interesting decisions that could have been better. We chose the torch to smash the window with and then to see our way around with. And we had a sack to cover the glass. And in retrospect, actually, we reckon the sack would have been good for catching the cat. But we could also have carried a rock in from the garden inside the sack. But yeah, so we scored 10 on that. We did pretty well on the cryptic clues and the other pictures. We got 9 out of the 10. We missed out on the risk of the dementia secondary to dementia risk with amitriptyline. But everything else we managed to nut out, work out. Lee brilliantly spotted that the women in the boat, of course, signalled a stroke. But yeah, that was quite challenging, and we spent most of our time on that. And there were quite a few outlandish theories advanced, and some of them actually were pretty good in the end. Then going on to the next one, we chose the linen cupboard because we could get a blanket and or a sheet, and we could use that to either carry her upstairs with and then to keep her warm afterwards. And we chose the spare room, and that just happened to have a wheelchair in it. So that was very good. We'd have gone for a wheelbarrow if it was there. Who would have thought that there'd be a key in the cake tin? I didn't think people did that anymore. And finally, for the pet, we chose the cat and scored top marks on that. So altogether, we had 10, 36, 18, and 15 for 79, which is a very respectable B+.
Right. Congratulations. So one thing that the team would take away from doing an exercise like this today?
Keeping an open mind, I think. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Murray. Perfect. Okay. Hope you enjoyed it. Team 2. Copus, was that your team? Team 2? Yeah, who's leading your team?
I think it ended up being me because we were going to screen share, but you really don't need to see our numbers. I think we got a B+ as well, according to the people who know about those numbers. We got 65, and actually I feel very pleased about that. We had a great time. Thank you, everybody. Our approach was communication. We talked. We asked questions. We shared our I think, yeah, people brought lots of different things, which was really good. And what do we take away? Bounce ideas around and think outside the square.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, guys, have I represented us properly? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I know that in some health professions, it's been the stop. Okay. So what I was hoping you would notice was the faces and the body language in that third clip. Do their faces, their body language, and the communication with each other suggest that they have experienced a safe and creative learning environment? And have they taken something away from the activity that could be used with their own students in their own IPE learning environment? And so just one final thing I was just going to share was this. So this is what we were hoping to achieve from the outset. And I hope that we did achieve that with our learning environment. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will stop screen sharing.
So I'm going to carry on now, and in the second example that you're going to see are 2 clips of pre-registration students in an in-person IPE learning activity called Involve. And these clips were filmed in May 2021 when New Zealand was still COVID-free. First, some background to involve. It's what we call an engagement IPE. It's for middle to later years students. And it's got the following structure. It has a 3-hour introductory workshop which the students take part in, and it's followed by a visit to a person with multi-morbidity. That can be in person, by phone or Zoom, depending on the COVID situation at the time. The students then prepare a presentation and then they share that presentation with the class. Involve has 4 learning outcomes, and we're going to focus on the first, which is about role clarification. The aim being for students at the end of the learning activity to be able to describe the different roles and skill sets of the professions that are represented in the class and how they contribute to the care of somebody with multi-morbidity. So the students that you're going to see, the pre-registration students, are from clinical psychology, medicine and pharmacy. Clinical psychology are in the first of a 2-year master's program, medicine in the 4th of a 6-year program, and pharmacy in the 4th of a 4-year program. You'll also see 2 facilitators in action, Ben Darlow, a physiotherapy specialist, and Wendy Thompson, a social worker. And we warmly thank all of those that agreed to take part in the video. Before I show you the first clip, I want you to look out for 3 things in the clip. The first thing is Ben Darlow, the IPE facilitator, setting the scene by opening with a Maori karakia or Maori blessing to create cultural safety. He then notes the overall purpose of the session with attention to the interprofessional learning outcomes. Secondly, notice the classroom setup. It's a deliberately prepared learning environment. Students are pre-grouped in discipline mixed groups. You'll notice 2 group lists on each table, so students sit alongside the other students that they're going to undertake their visit to the person with multi-morbidity in. Students are wearing name badges with their name and discipline on it, so they can easily talk to each other by name. And the third thing is the students are not facing a PowerPoint screen. They're facing each other, and so their attention is drawn to each other. The facilitators circulate around the tables and they join the tables from time to time in the exercises. At the end of the clip, which you're not going to see this part, but the facilitators spend quite a lot of time introducing themselves and then allow students to introduce themselves in small groups, and then they join together for a pizza lunch before they rejoin the class. So I'll just ask Linda if she'll show the first clip.
Perfect, Linda.
Tēnei te wānanga, o te iti, o te rahi, kia mōhio, kia marama, tihei mauri ora. So that just acknowledges us all coming here together to know, to learn about each other, to understand. And hopefully that's going to be the key focus of this afternoon, is getting to know each other and getting to understand a little bit about each other's disciplines, but as people as well. And then also learning a little bit of content around long-term conditions and what we expect out of you through your home visits and your presentations. I am a physiotherapist by trade. I practice a day a week as a physiotherapy specialist, and then I spend most of my time teaching and researching in this department, where I convene the 5th year general practice teaching for the 5th year medical students.
Wendy Thompson here, a social worker from next door.
I think I may have gone slightly over there, sorry.
That's all right, Linda. Just before we start the next clip, I want you again to notice 3 things. By this stage, the students are quite engaged with each other. They've spent probably about half an hour together, and there's quite a noticeable buzz in the classroom. The table groups of 3 are interacting freely, and they're extending to include all of the students in that particular table. The second thing is the care that Ben takes to make sure the first student chosen is affirmed and that they know that only one word is required from them. And the third thing is Ben's confirmation that all answers are correct, but pointing out that some characteristics of professions or disciplines can be applied to others, thus creating a sense of unity, but affirming the value of difference. So we'll now watch the next clip. It's a little bit longer.
Now, to work together, we've got to understand a little bit about each other's disciplines, but also you've got to understand a bit about your own. You've got to know what sort of skills you bring to the table. So, I think we've even got paper for this. I want you to think of a word that expresses your discipline. And you can write it down. Or your profession's philosophy of practice. It just describes or encapsulates your discipline. It's not supposed to be easy. It's very reductionist. Now I want you to also write down a word that you might allocate to the other disciplines at your table. Being able to express a complex.
I'm finding that
Okay, now also I want you to think about, and you can just write this below that little table, what makes your profession unique or different to other health disciplines. And alongside that, you can also think of or write down if there's a role or an activity that your discipline does that you think helps to define your discipline, or that you think is a really important or valuable part of what your discipline contributes to health. Okay, we don't need essays, so let's stop that there. So, let's go around first for clinical psychology. Now, I want the clinical psychologists to share with us what they wrote down in relation to their profession. Let's start. Who's the clin psych student here? Because you're closest to me. We only want one word, remember, and it doesn't have to be all of them because everyone else is going to share words too.
Okay, my word was healing.
Healing. Beautiful. Thank you. So what did we have? We had healing, we had exploratory, we had systems, we had focused, we had holistic, and we had collaborative. Awesome. Now, other people, start over in this table. What did other people write down for clinical psychology? Healing. Well, there's good crossover there. Well done. Dylan?
The same one, healing as well.
No interaction there, hey? Any, mental health. Yep. Well, it's probably why they chose the term, hey? Okay, let's come over here.
I did mind.
Awesome. Okay, let's then do medicine. Start over that corner this time.
I put focus.
Focus, so that's interesting because their focus came up in psychology as well, hey?
I put broad, so.
Broad. Right.
I put well-being.
Yes. Health.
Okay, I think that's what we already wanted, Eileen.
Yes, that's great. Thank you very much for your help there, Linda.
Welcome.
So now we're going to ask you to do some work in breakout rooms together. What we want you to do when you go into the breakout room is take a bit of time to share with each other who you are, where you work, your role and your interest in interprofessional education. Please give a name to your group and nominate one person to take notes and any take-home messages. And we suggest that you actually do this by the chat function within your breakout room so that nominated person can then select the text in the breakout room chat and bring that back with you and paste it into the main room function when we come back together. So we'll have a record of your main conversational points, any take-home points, and the wonderful name that you might give to each other. And, it could be like the All Blacks or the Sydney Swans or koalas or kiwis or whatever. We're going to get you to focus on some questions, and these are going to be pasted into the breakout room, so don't feel that you have to remember it all as I'm speaking. We want you to think about how you get the balance right between facilitator instructions and the learning activities and getting the participants to do the work. The second thing is you could talk about is what was it about the two different learning environments that created safe spaces to enhance learning? And the third thing is thinking about tips that you might want to put forward to us about how to create safe in-person learning into safe online learning.
I'm going to invite members of every group. Every group member, I'd like you to just type a short phrase with the name of your group. My group was the Black Swans, so hopefully you're going to see the word Black Swan say before we were yanked out of the room. So I lost all the notes I made for my group. So let's give everyone a moment to type. Over to Linda and Eileen, did you have some observations from the groups you were in?
We didn't even get round. We had a lovely series of introductions, and we didn't get round to naming ourselves, what we call ourselves, the collaborators or something. But we had quite, oh my goodness, I did save my chat, and now it's getting shoved off the screen. So we tackled the first question, so trying to get the balance right between facilitator instruction about learning activities and getting the participants to actually do the work. And so we said, well, how much do you get the participants to do before they come into the session? Get them to do more pre-reading and prep, and this might lighten the load for the actual session so they can do more. And funnily enough, I was just sharing and saying, we actually did do that with the IPE facilitators, but when we said, right, you've read all the instructions, they were blank. So that's why we had to go with the instructions again. Other suggestions were, how do you, let's see, sorry. It's important to chunk up big bodies of instructions into smaller sets of instructions and think about structuring the session. Signposting is important. And offer questions that need the learners to think about, respond, and to share. And watch you don't reveal too much information. Give them the space to learn about their own roles. Don't do it for them. That was us.
Thank you. Tooth fairies, can you tell us about the significance of time, please? I see Fiona posted for her group. Perhaps Fiona would like to speak, or one of the tooth fairies, please.
Megan, I think Melba's going to speak for us.
Okay. Well, we thought that, I just posted this in the chat too as well. We thought that, the significance of time and building relationships over time would be important, because, a few of us had seen that what happens when students are co-located in the same accommodation is, they get that time to really get to know each other on multiple levels. So if we had, time where we had, multiple sessions, happening over a period of time where maybe, people could be in the same breakout rooms and have that chance to get to know each other over that extended period, perhaps. But there were other things, and that's all I remember.
Thank you, Melissa. Anything else to add from the tooth fairies? I'm going to go to group 4 and ask Louise Wright to tell us about that balance, that right balance. What did your group come up with, please, Louise?
So I was actually in the same group as Linda. So Linda's beautifully summarised everything for us, and I popped it into the chat as well under group 4.
Thanks, Louise.
I wanted to ask my group, we called ourselves the group, about the idea of the 2080 rule if you could maybe just explain that to us, because I thought it was a really important point to have come out.
Elizabeth's point that she made. We said that it's really important the facilitators don't speak too much, that the students have time to engage with each other and actually learn and come to find answers themselves and discuss things with each other.
Thank you, Christy. The Black Swans noticed that too, and were concerned. In the video clip, it felt like the facilitator was doing a lot of speaking, but then again, we didn't see the whole event. Could we hear from the oneers, please? And tell us about that concept of building rapport. And I think that was, I'm just trying to keep up with you all. Karen Bolt, please.
Yeah, hi. So we just talked about trying to take all of those little things that can sometimes stop people from sharing and reflecting, which was, the idea of having the questions up and present, available throughout the whole session. Maybe sending some of those questions through prior to the session, although we acknowledge that a lot of people don't always read them before they start, and being really comfortable with some silence. And there was one really great suggestion from Claudia, I think, about whoever was speaking, asking them to then nominate another person within the group to speak, so that you don't hear from the same people all the time.
Thank you, Karen. I'm going to ask Karen Donald to tell us about that balance as well that was discussed in her group, please.
We started off with question 1 and didn't really get past that, but there was absolute unanimous agreement and lots of head nodding around the importance of facilitator training, that it was so key that facilitators were trained really well, had a good understanding of their role and of interprofessional education and practice, and that so often facilitators are put forward who may be fairly inexperienced or more junior staff, and that's often the people that are put forward to facilitate, and that training is even more important, because of that. And the other conversation around face-to-face versus online experience was, it felt less important about specifying exactly what the environment was, and more important about understanding that safe means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And again, that then plays to the experience of the facilitator, I think, to make sure that the spaces are safe regardless of where they are. So I hope that represents that discussion well enough for my group.
Thank you very much, Karen. I'd like to dob in Fiona Kemp for a moment, just to do a quick advertisement for a piece of work that AIPPEN did that connects, Karen, to your point about facilitator training and the importance of even the beginners having a sense of what they need to know. Fiona, are you still here for us?
Hi. Thanks, Megan. I'll stick it in the chat in a moment, but this idea of what are the skills that we want people to have as a facilitator is something as an AIPPEN group we were discussing. So last year we had a look at the literature and pulled all these knowledge, skills, attributes, and rather than writing as a paper, we've created an infographic, which is things you need to know before you rock up, things you should do during the session, things to reflect on, and troubleshooting. So I'll stick the chat in a moment, but hopefully it's just that useful thing in that I know we're often asking people to just help with a one-off session for IPE, and they don't necessarily read the whole facilitator guide or what's required, but at least this highlights the main attributes we want, which are, it's not about talking, it's about promoting discussion, expose the way we need one another in practice, what we model, etc. But thanks, Megan.
Thank you very much, Fiona. I'm just going to wrap up now because we're almost at the top or half of the hour, depending on your time zone. I would very much like to thank our guests today, Eileen McKinlay and Linda Gulliver, and also all of you who volunteered to be breakout room facilitators, the steering committee members of AIPPEN and our ANZAPPE fellows who came today. And a special shout to Jill Romeo behind the scenes, keeping us from crashing and making sure people who are late pop in. You'll notice she has put an evaluation survey in the chat. Very important. We really value your feedback. And our goal was to encourage conversations between people interested in interprofessional education. And we want to know if we hit the mark or not and what we can do to improve your experience, because we would like you to come next time. Our next session will be Wednesday, the 25th of May. So please pencil that into your calendars. And we're seeking a guest facilitator or team to discuss a hot topic, a burning issue, a long-standing thorny problem, or an innovative idea or practice in the next session. There's a place in the evaluation form for you to write your name and contact information. So I will contact you and work up a little presentation for that May date. Please stay online at the end of this session if you'd like to tell me in person that you're interested. And hopefully Fiona has dropped in that link to the infographic. She's given me the thumbs up. Thank you all very much, and I wish you the very best for the rest of your day. We look forward to connecting with you again very soon.